This is Jill Pack with the Seasons of Joy podcast. This is episode number 139, entitled Finding Your Fancee with Jancee Wright. Are you a woman of faith who is struggling to navigate your current season of life? Do you feel like life is just happening to you instead of for you? My name is Jill Pack, and I'm a certified faith-based life coach and a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I want you to know that no matter your season or your circumstance, it is possible to create a more joyful life, and I would love to show you how. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, my friends. Welcome to this week's episode. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you. I am interviewing my friend Jancee Wright, who is a professional simplifying and systemizing life coach and the founder of Finding Your Fancee and Small and Simple Wins, who helps women get out of overwhelm and into action. Jancee's mission is to inspire midlife women like you and I to find their own, what she calls, fancy, by simplifying the stuff in their homes and their hearts that no longer serve them. She helps them find and create space for new loves in this next chapter of life with only things they want to keep on purpose. You're going to get to know her a little bit and learn from her. She is such a fun person to talk with and be around. I actually am part of her membership as I work to simplify my own home. And the things I've learned from her have been very impactful to me and help me create a space that I love and making it a little easier for my family as I get older, that they won't have to manage all the stuff that I leave behind. So, without further ado, I am going to share with you my conversation with Jancee Wright. I am with my friend Jancee Wright. I'm so excited to have her on the podcast today. I've wanted to have her on. I think what we're going to talk about today will be empowering and inspiring. So I first met Jancee, it's been a couple of years ago, probably we were in a cohort, and then I'm actually part of her membership to get organized. And I just love the way she does her membership and how she teaches you and guides you all along the way. So I'm going to let Jancee introduce herself, tell the audience a little bit about you, and then we'll dive into who you help.
Awesome. Yay. I'm so excited to be here, Jill. You are so much fun and just such a delightful person. So I know that your audience here is just so fun. So my name is Jancee Wright, and I live in sunny southern Utah. So I live in St. George. I an outdoors person. I love anything outdoors. I love running and biking and hiking, and so I feel like my backyard is kind of like my playground. So that's a little bit about me. I'm a mom of 4 kids. I am in midlife. I have my oldest 2 are married, and then I have a daughter in college, away at college, and then I just have a 16-year-old at home. So I have been through a lot of different stages, maybe like a lot of you. And so I've been married for 30 years. We just celebrated our 30-year anniversary, and yeah, life is good. It's figuring all the midlife things out and all the emotions that come with that. But yes, so that's a little bit about me.
So Jancee's kind of her tagline is Finding Your Fancee.
Yep. Finding Your Fancee with Jancee.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
So tell me that name.
So I'm just kind of like, I've always been kind of that geeky girl since I was 5 years old is what my mom says. Is I just always loved organization. I just would like have my shoe boxes and I would line up everything in my room, and I used shoe boxes as like a basket, right? and then I was kind of that geeky girl in college. All my roommates were like, organize my things. Like I've just always loved organization. And so, yeah, when I decided to start my company, I just wanted a cutesy name. And I thought, okay, how can I help people find joy in organizing? And I just kind of came to me one day. I think I actually had just left the temple and I was driving home and I was like, finding your fancy. Oh, I like it. It rhymes my name. And so that's kind of where the title of my company came from, is finding your fancy. And it's kind of blossomed from there in the sense that I think we each have a level of organization that's different,
Hmm.
right? So I love that you get to find what makes you happy and brings you joy in your home and what you fancy. And it can look so different for everyone. Like some people love the white tones, some people love bright tones, some people like, whatever it is, just finding what you fancy individually just feels so awesome, right? It
Mm.
just feels true to you by the end,
Yeah.
whatever you've
That's
accomplished.
what I've loved. It's like you offer suggestions and things that have worked, but really it's like each individual person goes to their space and you give them some pointers, but then they make it theirs. So it's
Yeah,
been
and that's what I love about it. I just like this light bulb moment of, oh, this feels organized enough for me. And there's different levels of that. And I just think that's such a beautiful thing.
yeah. Because it's honestly, we talked about this a little bit beforehand with social media and everything, right? And Pinterest, we see all these things and we kind of think of how it should be.
Yeah.
And we're not as good as that person because our space doesn't look like that. So
Yeah.
it can be challenging to kind of accept the place of where you are and what organized means to you as a person, not what everybody's supposed to be doing.
Yes. And so hopefully that name, Finding Your Fancy, that's what it is, right? That's what my hope is that you get to find what you fancy and love and finish there and just feel proud of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. So you do some in-home stuff, you do Zoom stuff, kind
Mhm.
of do it all. So I know you work with old ladies like me.
And me. I'm right there with you, Jill.
And so that's kind of what I want to focus on today is kind of this mid-season of life. There's a lot of ladies out there listening that maybe are looking at their space going, I don't know where to begin. I don't, this is overwhelming or whatever, probably a lot of thoughts, right? And emotions. But I would love to hear, like, what do you see as you work with women in the midlife? Like, what is their biggest struggles? Or are, like, if there's more than one, what are their struggles as they kind of come to this place of like, yeah, I need to do something different?
Yes, that's such a good question. So I have four things that I think are the main things that women in midlife struggle with. And it's when they're decluttering. I don't really love the word declutter. I always call it simplifying. It just sounds prettier. I
Mm.
like it better. But I just think when you're simplifying and systemizing any space, it can really feel, honestly, at midlife like an uphill battle, right? And so but it's really not just about the stuff. There's other challenges with it too. So I think the first one is an emotional attachment. So really, honestly, by midlife, we've accumulated not just our belongings, but also memories, right? So many memories of just stuff. And so it's hard to let go of items that you kind of tie to your past or your family. And I am right in the middle of this with this kind of stuff. And I think more now than ever. So I've been actually going in homes and I started my company 7 years ago. And I've seen the transition even within myself of at that time when I started, I still had all my kids at home. And it was such a different stage than now when I'm really letting go of some things that, like games that we used to play, or like some of their things that they really could care less about, but I have more of an emotional attachment to it. And so I've had to just even apply my own tips to myself and be like, if you keep everything and everything's important, nothing's important. And so when I really zone in on this, like first of all, giving myself like maybe just one bin and saying, okay, I can only keep what's in this one bin. It kind of gives you some limitations and helps the process become a little bit easier. So definitely emotional attachment. is one of those.
Hmm.
I think the second one is probably changing roles, right? So for many of us, we're kind of maybe juggling being a caretaker for like a parent, like aging parents, or we're supporting our grown kids now, right? Or just adjusting to being an empty nester. So honestly, the transition can leave us with a lot of leftover stuff.
Mm.
And I've noticed this with a lot of my clients that are in midlife. And honestly, there's not really any clear sense of what to do with it. We're kind of like, what do I do with all these things? Right. And so, one thing that I really encourage my clients with this is to think with your own personal things is what do I want to leave for those that are going to be left behind when I pass?
Mm.
And I don't want that emotion, that burden on them. And so if everything that I get rid of and then keep is just the things that I really care about, and I tell them that, it's going to make it easier for them than just having so many things. I've worked with clients where honestly, they just have a whole just boxes and boxes of stuff of letters or whatever. And they're like, I don't know if my mom would want me to keep this. And they're crying and it's such an emotional time for them. And
Mhm.
so just really zoning in on like, what kind of things do I want to keep that really that my kids will realize were important to me because that's all I kept. Does that
Mm.
make sense? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
totally, totally. I would say when my parents passed, right, they actually did a pretty good job. They had downsized and got rid of stuff, so it really didn't take us a ton of time to go through their stuff, and there were just a few things I took that meant like some nativities that
yeah,
did
yeah.
me, but really not much else, and so I remember that process. It's a hard process because you're mourning your parents, you're trying to navigate this new phase of life, and so to have it easy, I was so grateful. On the other side, my husband's his last our name's Pat, and that is not just a name. I have a lot of stuff, and,
Oh, yeah.
his parents were born and they lived in the Depression.
Mhm.
So that's a whole different mindset, right? Like,
Right.
holding on to stuff made sense for them because of
Absolutely.
what they had gone through, and so that experience wasn't terrible, but there still was a lot of stuff, and so it was interesting to see the difference of the process could be so easy
Mhm.
versus really complicated.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I love
I
that.
love that you've seen the difference with that, with the
Yeah,
two scenarios. Yeah.
yeah, and that
So yeah,
question.
with basic roles, that's just yeah, that's like that's one of those harder things for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And so if we can
Uh,
simplify it for our kids, it makes an emotional experience not as emotional. So,
exactly. It makes it not so heavy and
yeah,
less decisions
yeah,
make, which
yeah,
can make it, even though it is a hard time for them anyways.
yeah.
The third thing I had is for time and energy. So honestly, between work and our families and everything else that we have going on, finding the energy to tackle the clutter, it feels impossible some days, right? Just feels like one more thing that we have to do. And so I really just teach just think small. In fact, I came up with this, it was probably been like 4 or 5 years ago. I remember I was reading my scriptures and I came across the scripture that's by small and simple things, great things come to pass. And I remember thinking, I need to teach my clients small, like just start small. Like it doesn't have to be big. One teeny tiny drawer, one teeny tiny cupboard. I also teach, and Jill knows this, but I teach the 20 minutes. Like just set a timer for 20 minutes and see what you can accomplish in 20 minutes. And really, when we do that one action of just setting our timer, it puts us into like go motion, right? We're like our brain staying laser focused on whatever we're working on. And you can do a lot in 20 minutes.
Yeah, yeah. And
Something that can help.
it's just taking that action, right? That timer creates an action, which creates motivation and momentum. Like, it's just that little step is what creates the rest. So
Exactly. And it gets you excited. So then you're like, oh, I can do another drawer or I could do it, for the next time. And so something to help with that time and energy is just to think small. Just think
yeah,
really small. What can I do that's just really small? And maybe it'll take you longer, but there's really not a time frame. Like
yeah,
just moving forward is moving forward. So
yeah. I like to tell my clients, like, even and just on this week's podcast, I talk about goals and how, I mean, organization isn't necessarily the goal. It's
yes.
you're becoming and learning along the way to get that space where you want it, right?
So
And
beautiful. Perfect.
so I
Yeah.
think that that it's the end result is wonderful, but it's the journey along the way, the little things you're learning. One thing that I love that you did is you encouraged us to have one drawer that was empty.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
just think that's so fun because it's so easy to just fill them all full. You're like, yeah, there's space. I can put something in it. And so I've really tried to keep this. It's a basket in my bathroom. It's just empty.
Yeah.
And it's just a reminder, like, it's kind of like the little small and simple thing, right? It's just like
Yep.
that basket is empty and it just feels good. It's
It does. It does. In fact, it's so fun because a lot of times when I'm working with clients, there will be an empty drawer or some empty cupboards, and they'll say, "What should I fill? What should I fill in that? What should I put
yeah,
in that?" And I'll say, "What if we did nothing? Like that would feel so." And
yeah,
they're like, "Oh, I never thought about that. That I
yeah.
wouldn't have to put anything in that drawer or that cupboard." And so, yeah, it's so empowering to just have an empty drawer that you can open it, and kind of when you open it and it's empty thinking, "What how does this make me feel?" Oh, it makes me feel freedom, it makes me feel light, it makes me feel happy, right? And how can we create that in some other spaces in your home? So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Because
good.
I think we've all done where, like, at least I have, where it's like, okay, I'm cleaning my room. And you pull everything out and it looks like a tornado went off. And
Yes.
then you're like exhausted and you're
Yep.
not in the position to put it all back.
Mhm.
Right. And so it's, yeah,
Overwhelming. It feels
yeah,
like too much, but and what if instead you just took just your blouses out or just
yeah,
your jeans, right? It just
yeah,
feels more doable,
yeah,
and then it gets you excited to do another category
yeah,
versus everything at once.
yeah.
So, yeah, so good.
Mm,
The fourth thing I had was overwhelm. So, honestly, in midlife, with just years of accumulation and belongings, it's hard to know where to start, right? Oftentimes we're like, where do I even begin? Like, what space do I begin in? This just feels so much. So, just thinking, like you had mentioned, like your sock drawer, thinking of just a small space, like what is a tiny, teeny space that I can start in that you have no emotional attachment to? Because oftentimes I'll have clients say, "Oh, well, let's start with this sentimental box."
yeah,
Let's not. Let's start with something that you're really, you're pretty much not emotionally attached to your socks. So, and then I have a couple other areas that I'll share later with too that are really good spaces. But just picking a space that's really small and you have no emotional attachment to, that's a really good place to
good
start.
place to start. I
Your
love
pen drawer, your junk drawer. I don't really like to call it a junk drawer. I like to call it a multi-purpose drawer.
that. Oh, I love that.
Don't call it a junk drawer. That just makes you want to put all the junk in there, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, things, but multi-purpose just feels like, oh, it actually has a purpose for many things.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that. Those are great. So the first
First
was
one is emotional
emotional
attachment,
attachment. Okay. And then
changing roles,
changing roles,
time and energy,
energy.
and overwhelm. So those are probably the four biggest struggles that I've seen women.
As you explained each one, I was like, yeah, that me.
You're like, yeah, yeah, that's me, right? Most of us. So,
Yeah. So how do you, as you navigate those different areas with the people you work with, what do you find is the best place to start?
so I always encourage your dish towels, like the dish towel drawer. A lot of times we have just kept so many dish towels. We have so many towels, right? And so just going through them and just like taking everything, all your dish towels, gathering them all together and putting them on like the kitchen counter. And it's so funny because immediately our first thought is, oh, I don't know which ones I want to keep and which ones I don't. But you have to remember that a decision is just a thought. So we can pause and just step back for a second and say, you know what, inside me, I really do know if I like this or not. Like this one has holes in it. This one has so many stains from being on top of my, my homemade rolls or whatever. It's got all the butter stains on it. Or we just know immediately when you pull it out, if you like it, if it's like old and it's past its prime. And then just deciding where do I want to put these? Does this drawer work? If this drawer that you have them in works, then how much space do you have to actually fold your towels and have them in that drawer and not having any more than what will fit in the drawer? And then also just practicing that one in, one out rule. So like I apply that to everything that I get in my house is if I'm going to get a new dish towel, then what do I have one that is old or whatever I'm going to throw out? So dish towels is a really good place to start. Yeah. No emotional attachment, right?
Yeah. Well, when I did this, there was like crocheted dish rags.
Okay. Yes.
Yes. Like someone sewed this. Someone did this. Should I,
yes.
But I did. I eventually let it go.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, I had dish rags in one drawer and dish towels in a different drawer. But by going through that, I was able to put them in the same drawer.
Oh, that feels amazing.
Yeah,
or have an empty drawer, or it could be for something else. Right?
Yeah, it was
interesting. Awesome. I love that you said that was really difficult. Is a lot of times we think about the loss, but if we can think about the recipient of who may receive that, especially if it's in good condition and we're donating it to a charity or something, a donation center, like, oh my goodness, someone's going to see this and think it's so beautiful and it's just going to brighten their day. And just thinking differently about it can make it easier to let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. So what else do you work with them on?
So a lot of times women in midlife, they're trying to downsize, right? We're just trying to get rid of things. And I honestly am in that stage too. I'm doing this. I tell the membership ladies, Jill knows this, but I tell you that I'm doing this right alongside you right now because we don't have as many people living in our home anymore. So where we once needed 6 suitcases, we only need 3, right? And so just really going through, I think the thing to remember is organization is not a one and done. And it goes through the different stages of your life. So I just think you're constantly in a state of simplifying. And if you can kind of think that all the time in the back of your mind of like, it's okay to just let things go and we're not using these things and really getting to a place where everything that you have in your home, you're using, you love, you want it there on purpose. It brings value to your life. It's so awesome that there's so much freedom in that because you have less to dust, less to clean, less to manage. And it feels freeing to be able to enjoy those other things that you love, writing or walking or reading and just embracing this next stage of just, you know what, we really don't need as much as maybe we did when the whole family was here. But again, slowly, just like there's no time on it. Like there's not a time limit. Just slowly going through everything, really deciding if you really do want it and want to keep it. And if you do, where is it home going to be? So I would just say the stage of life is just really because a lot of times like we had a career maybe, or we were like, I've worked with a lot of women that are business women. And so they have a lot of business suits and things like that. And now they've retired and they're in a stage of life where they're doing more outdoor adventures and stuff. Well, let's let go of those business suits and things that you're no longer using that are in your closet, just taking up valuable real estate. And let's get you to a place where you just have these fun adventure things, clothing or whatever that sounds fun, right? Why is that hanging there to remind you of the past? It's okay to let that go. And we have to remember that anything like that is just, the memories are the thought that we're just thinking. And so,
Yeah, I love that. I think that's something else I like to I think we as women, especially women in the church,
mhm,
right? It's easy to l- like look at the first half of life, and we've got a plan and we're doing it. And then
yeah,
we hit that transition when everything changes and it's like, okay, now what do I do? But I think that what you're teaching is you're making space for something even not necessarily more beautiful, but as beautiful, right?
yes,
You're
yeah,
freeing yourself up to still create. And I think that that's a trap we can fall into is by hanging on to all that stuff. We're using more energy than we realize to manage it. And so in a way, we're kind of limiting this season to grow and develop in different and new ways.
100%. You said it so beautifully. Yeah. And it feels so free and fun. Like if we can, I love I love just thinking, how can I make it simple, easy, and fun? And just thinking of it instead of like mourning and being sad for like that state of life. Like okay, for instance, this weekend I went through an entire closet. No one was home. And I thought, okay, I'm just gonna go through this closet of just things that we've had as a family that no longer need games and things. And there was this record player in there that I remember my daughter loved so much. And it was like a portable record player. So I called her up and said, hey, do you want this anymore? And she said, no, mom, I really, I really don't. And I had to be like, stop for a second and say, that was such a fun time when I remember her just dancing to it and it was awesome. But it's okay to think of who's going to get this
Yeah.
turquoise, bright blue record player and just be so happy, right? And just letting go of all those things. And then it's not the memories stay with us. And if the other thing that I encourage you to do is take a picture of it, right? Take a picture of you holding it or them holding it and create a book of some of those things
Yeah.
that wait, it's just as fun to look through it, and the memories are what we have of it, and not necessarily the item.
Yeah. That's so good. That's so beautiful. Well, what else? Is there anything else you want to share? There's so many good nuggets that
So
you're
many good nuggets, right?
Yes.
Let's see. I think the other thing that a lot of ladies, and this has been coming up a lot lately, so I'll address it, but is in midlife, one thing that I think is really important is getting your important documents in order. So the reason I bring that up is because I have worked with so many clients that they don't have them in order, or their loved, like a parent or something has passed away and they can't find important documents. And so I teach classes at our local college about this, about helping people set up all their important documents. I think it should be in one place, one location. And so I really encourage, I do it in a binder, like a specific binder that's just for important documents. But I think it's really important to get our important documents at midlife in order and to tell whoever is over our estate and all those things where everything is and show them the location and tell them how to get in this specific binder that we do. I encourage you to have a page that has all the account numbers and everything on it so that they can get into your bank accounts and log into everything, right? And then also, I think it's really important to have, and in lieu of all the fires that are happening right now in California, I think it's really important to walk around your home and actually take a video of every space in your home and to put it on a flash drive and to have that with your important documents as well. Because heaven forbid, if anything happened to your home, you have documentation of all that and the value of the things that you lost. But that's something I think that we don't really think about when we're younger, about our important documents and just having them easy to find. But it's such an important thing
Yeah.
in life is to have that all in order. It just makes your kids' life so much easier too when you pass away to have, and you know, it seems morbid to talk about that, but it's so important to have those documents in order.
Well, and we all know that we will die.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
It's
Yeah.
something that it's not going to happen doesn't make it not happen.
Exactly.
So
Yep.
when we can kind of come to the reality of like, yeah, our life will end. And you touched on it in the beginning, what gift do we want to give our kids when we leave? And that be less stuff and organized paper so that they can transition. I know when my parents died, we did have all of their stuff and it was pretty simple
Oh,
to
nice.
go.
Yes. Yeah.
And I can't imagine if we are trying to navigate that stuff and you're mourning them at the same time, that's just
Exactly. In fact, I have such a tender heart for it because of an experience that happened. I mean, my dad was over my grandma's estate, and they could not find her birth certificate. And they tore apart the entire house looking for that. And in order to get a death certificate, you have to have a birth certificate. And so I just saw him just like he was trying to mourn his mom, and he was just so much stress and anxiety of trying to find this birth certificate, and they had to reapply for it. And it was such a process. And I just remember that heartache, and just I'm realizing then the importance of having it all in order. So I
yeah.
think it's really important.
Yeah, such a good reminder. Yeah. Anything else you want to offer?
Anything fun? Let's see.
Yeah,
I
what's
just
fun?
I know I need to end on a really fun note, right? So I just encourage you to just start. Like
Yeah.
just pick your sock drawer, your towels, linens, whatever it is, something that doesn't you don't have a lot of emotional attachment to, and just start. Set a 20-minute timer. Make it fun. I'm always like, how can you make it fun? Turn on a podcast, turn on some fun music. Think about a reward for yourself that's not bringing in more things that feels fun. Like, I get to go for a walk, or I get to read this book, or I get to go have lunch with a friend, whatever. And then putting that on the calendar, I think, is so important. So you're not only deciding, okay, I'm gonna, organize my closet, and I'm just gonna do one teeny area at a time. So I'm just gonna do just my shirts, and then just my shoes, and whatever, and putting it on the calendar, setting a 20-minute timer, and then honoring that commitment to yourself as if it was a job. Like a lot of times we want to get it done, but then it comes up on the calendar, and we feel so many emotions of like, oh no, this is going to be so hard. And we start thinking all these thoughts, right? But just thinking, you know what, I can make this fun. And so just starting, I that would be my tip, is just to start, set that 20-minute timer, honor that commitment to yourself, and slowly you'll get it done. You'll get it to a place that feels like what you fancy, and it feels organized enough
Yeah. For you. Yeah.
for you, for you
Yeah.
personally. Mhm.
And I just remembered what I was going to say clear back in the beginning.
Good, good.
I was talking about the goal is not the goal. It's also like there's no organized police,
Yes.
right? Like there's no
Yes.
one that's going to look at this and go, that's wrong. Or like,
Exactly.
so just let that go and
Yep.
with it. And I think for me, at what I've found, there's still little places I got to organize, but as I do one, and I think it's going to be fun to see how this looks when I'm done, right? And so
Yes.
then when I
Yes.
open the drawer, I open that cupboard, it's like, ah, that feels so good. I love how that feels. And that adds to the fun. And so I found that because I've had these small little wins, then that's creating the fun because it's like, oh,
Yes.
what's possible. So
Yes.
just going to keep at it a little at a time.
Yeah, just a tiny bit at a time. Like, just think small. Just always think small. And because honestly, small matters, and it adds up, and it honestly adds up to something huge. And but it's just taking those first steps, and just starting.
Yeah.
So
Love
yeah,
that.
I love that. So good.
Yeah. So the three things that you kind of talk about is simplify.
Yes. So there's actually five. So first is clarify. So it's like
Fine. Okay.
clarify. And that's the thing that we kind of miss that step.
Mm.
And I like to start with saying to clients, like, and so I'm saying this to you too, is when you walk into a space, instead of thinking, how do I want this to look? How do you want it to feel?
Yeah.
How do I want it to feel when I'm all finished? I want it to feel light and airy, and I want it to feel happy. And I want, like, how do you want it to feel? And so that's like clarifying. And what's the purpose of this room? Like a lot of times we don't really have a purpose for what it is. Like, what does it serve? Well, your office maybe serves for your business or doing a podcast or just maybe just paying bills. Maybe it's just sitting down just to pay bills and you just want it to feel right. So just clarifying. And then I teach simplifying. So that's basically decluttering, just getting rid of things and only keeping what you're actually using and that you love. And then systemizing, which is basically the organizing part. And with systemizing, I like to say that you want to be able to find everything should have a home address. So just like with your home, your personal home, you have an address, and that's how the firemen would be able to find your house or your people that are coming to visit you. It's because you have an address. So have a home address for every single item in your home. And I really encourage you to label it. I think it helps your family put it back. I think it helps your spouse, your hubby, right? Put it back. So having a home address. So that's systemizing. So clarify, simplify, systemize style is just kind of the fun part. That's the part that's like, what do you fancy? Do you want white containers? Do you want baskets? Do you want just shoe boxes? Does that feel good enough? Like whatever it is, whatever you fancy is perfect. And that's the style part. And then the refresh is just creating habits to put it back to home base. So what does that look like? That looks like putting your keys in the same exact place so you can find them every time, right? Or that looks like hanging up your purse or putting your clothes away at the end of the night and not just throwing them on the floor, right? Just habits to refresh and keep it that way. Obviously, like I said at the beginning, organization, it's not really a one and done. It's like a continual just thing. But once you get everything in its own home address and it has a place, it's really easy to get it back to home base again.
Yeah.
Super.
Yeah.
So
You're not having to dig out of a hole, right?
yes.
In a few minutes, getting it back. And because you're going to live life, it's going to get messy.
Absolutely. We don't
Right.
live in a magazine. I always tell clients that we don't live in a magazine. We actually live in our homes. But if you can get in just those little refresh habits of putting everything away, it really makes it easy to just tidy up for 5 minutes at the end of the day or whatever. So clarify, simplify, systemize, style, and refresh.
I
So
love it. Those are have been so helpful to me. And I think the one thing that really hit me from those is, we don't want to organize stuff that we aren't going to keep, right? And so
yeah,
the order of things, right?
yeah. So organized clutter is still clutter, right? It just is. And like a lot of times we'll dump out something like a basket and then we just like organize it in the basket, right? But like really taking things out and saying, am I using this? When was the last time I really did use this? Does this really matter to me for my current lifestyle and where I'm at currently?
Yeah.
Right. And right now we're in midlife. So maybe we don't need as many games. Maybe we don't need as many, but maybe you do. Maybe your family, when they all gather, everybody plays games. And so just that's where that clarification comes
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. I love each piece of that. So good. So good. So if you want to learn more about Jancee, you can follow her on Instagram. She does a lot of cool reels, gives lots of tips. Tell them where they can find you and where they can learn.
Oh, that's so sweet. I'm on Instagram, finding your fancy, and fancy is FANCEE. I also have a website, findingyourfancy.com. I thought it would be really fun. So I've created a 90 things to simplify in midlife checklist.
Okay. I
So
love
it'll be
it.
a freebie that you guys can download if you want, that Jill can have that will kind of get you started, right? Like just like it's a little checklist of just little teeny tiny spaces. Also, if you hop over to my website, I have a free paper clutter checklist also, which will put you into my newsletter that I send out every Wednesday. It's called Wednesday Win. And every single Wednesday, I send out a teeny tiny space that you can simplify. And by the end of the year, you'll have 52 spaces that will have less stuff in them. So it kind of is just like a little guide that you can get throughout the entire year every Wednesday, which is kind of fun. And so, yeah,
I
that's
love it.
me. What about
I'll
me?
put that link in the show notes. And yeah, I can't say enough about Jancee. You want to follow her, you want to learn from her. It will help you be the creator of your life instead of the manager of your life.
I love that. Thank you, Jill. That's so sweet. That's
So
so kind.
good. So thank you
You.
so much for being here, Jancee.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a blast. I've loved it.
So fun. Okay. Thank you for tuning in to the Seasons of Joy podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with your friends and family. If you want to learn more about me or how to work with me, just visit my website, www.seasons-coaching.com, and have a joyful week.